Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now what we're doing today is looking at how you can make much more cinematic footage with your GoPro camera. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. First thing you want to do is go in to your video settings. Now we're going to shoot in 4K. So we're going to put 4K, 24 frames per second, which is the most cinematic. And for field of view, we're going to go super view. It allows us to take in as much data as possible into the very small chip that we have here in the GoPro camera. Stabilization we'll put onto auto. Pro Tune has to be on. This is really important. And with shutter speed, you can leave it at auto, but as we're shooting in 24 frames per second, we want the shutter speed to be 1/48th. So we're using the 180-degree rule here. That means we're going to double the frame rate to find the shutter speed that we need. Now if you have a lot of movement in your shot, then you're going to want to try and keep to this rule as much as you can. But if you're up in the air and there's hardly any movement, it's not really as important to follow the 180-degree rule. So white balance, we're going to go with native. This way, when we're going from shot to shot or from inside to outside in the same shot, we're not going to see colours changing in the middle of it, which is going to make your colour grading really, really difficult. So we keep it at native for all our shots, and then when we come to colour grade, it's going to be easier for us. So ISO minimum, we're going to leave at 100. Max, we're going to keep at 100 as well. Now, if you have an ISO higher than 400 with a GoPro, there's going to be a lot of noise introduced, especially in the darker areas. So, where possible, we keep it down as low as 100, and if we have to push it maybe up to 400, preferably no higher than 200. Now in most situations in daylight when it's bright, that's going to be absolutely fine. It needs a lot of light because it's such a small camera. Now with colour, I would suggest you keep it flat because the GoPro colour is highly saturated and not particularly cinematic, let's say. Sharpness, we're going to keep low. Now we're good to go. Now some of the key accessories that you might use: tripod / selfie stick, a Jaws clamp with a gooseneck on top, so it just clamps to pretty much anything. This is a suction mount that you can stick on the outside of cars or onto some walls. Another option is the camera grip. You've got stabilization, even if you don't own the GoPro 7, you can use this. Now if you do have a GoPro 7, the stabilization built in is really, really good, but it's still not quite as good as the hand grip. And another added benefit of the hand grip is it's got a big battery in, so it will charge your camera as you're going along. It makes your footage so much better, so much more cinematic with just this. Now when it comes to shooting, make sure that you take it seriously when you're moving around. So what I mean by that is, when you're holding your camera up, don't just sort of flob along like a Teletubby or anything like that. What you're going to do is hold it nice and steady, preferably two hands, and lower your centre of gravity and try and move like a ninja. So you're going to be walking very, very carefully so as not to introduce bumps into your footage. Now even if you've got hyper smooth stabilization on, you're still going to see these steps. If you're shooting somewhere that is particularly dark, the best thing you can do, rather than bumping up ISO or anything like that, is getting one of these little panel lights. If you want to create some of the really buttery smooth slow motion shots, then you'll have to up your frame rate. If you go all the way down to 1080p, that allows you to record up to 240 frames per second, which is a super slow-mo, which will look amazing, but that will mean that you cannot remove the fisheye or crop into the image without losing some of your resolution. So bear that in mind. So maybe 2.7K is a bit of a middle ground there, so you can get some sort of slow-mo without losing your resolution at your final 1080p output. So when it comes to the edit, One factor to bear in mind is the music choice. Now, if you want to use free music, YouTube has an excellent selection. So from YouTube Studio, if you go into other features, audio library, then it takes you here where you can see all the music that's available. You can look at different genres, moods, and find the perfect song choice that's really going to complement the video. Make sure you check if you need to put anything in the description of your video. There'll be a little symbol here next to it if you do need to. So having footage with a fisheye effect on is going to give the game away that it's GoPro footage, and it's just doesn't look quite cinematic, especially when there's movement there. You can see the distortion all garbling and moving around. So what I like to do is apply something called the Alex 4D fisheye correction. So here we are in Final Cut Pro. I've already imported the clip and I've created a project here. So I'm going to drag and drop the section that I want to look at. And if you look, you can clearly see there's that fisheye effect going on there very, very strongly. So once you've downloaded the Alex 4D wide angle fix, you can literally grab it, drop it on there like so, and look at that crazy difference. And if you haven't used Super View, you might only need to do 127 degrees or maybe even 90 degrees. We see there's still some distortion, so you can mess with that. And I'm going to leave it in the description so that you can find it yourself and use it. I use it on Final Cut Pro and it's really easy. You just drag and drop it over the top of your footage and the fisheye is gone, and you're already halfway there to making your footage look really cinematic. If your computer struggles with 4K footage, then you can either use proxies when you're editing, or you could drop it down to 2.7K or even 1080p if you really have to. But if you're filming at 1080p, when you come to getting rid of the fisheye, you're definitely going to lose some resolution and it won't be 1080p anymore. But this way, you shoot at 4K, you can crop in and take away the lens distortion, and it's still going to be 1080p when you output. Also, we're going to add on some black bars, or the letterbox, if you will. And what that does is it gives it that look that it's made for the cinema, or films on Netflix. They've always got those bars on the top and bottom, and that's a telltale sign that what you're watching is a film. It's cinematic, it puts you in that zone, and it certainly has that really cool look. So we're going to look at the letterbox now. So if you just go to your search bar down here, type in letterbox, there it is. Again, as simple as dragging it over. I like to use 2:35 to 1. And what you can also do is make sure you move this around so that whatever you want to focus on is still in the center of the frame. Now we're going to put on a LUT to see if we can turn it from just some boring, plain, flat footage into something that looks maybe like Mad Max if you're going for that sort of style, or maybe a nice teal and orange. Okay, before we apply the LUT, what I'm going to do is quickly correct the exposure so I can see my luma here. To make sure that's up, just go in View here and choose Video Scopes, and then if you're not seeing the luma, check one of these and then click luma. Now your highlights are up here at the top, your shadows in the bottom here, and your midtones in the middle. When you adjust your exposure, you want to make sure nothing goes above 100, because then that area turns to white, and anything that goes below 0 will turn to black. So if you notice, when I pull up the highlights, near the top goes up. So let's go to close to 100, and with the shadows, let's pull them down, and there on the right hand side it's almost touching. And then I want it a little bit moodier, so I'm going to pull the mid-tones down a little bit. Okay, so that's a slight correction. Let's see what that did. So it's washed out, it's added a bit of a contrast in there, it looks pretty nice. Now if we search in this bar at the bottom, LUT, custom LUT, drag that on top, and then that will appear in this area here. Then you can choose any LUTs you've previously loaded in here will be in this list here. If not, choose custom LUT and then go to wherever you've downloaded the LUTs to. There'll be .cube files. The ones in the description, unless I've changed them in the future, should be these. So we'll have a look. That first one, that's quite nice, I like that. Change the amount. And boom, you're good to go. If you want to saturate it a little bit more, I might add a little bit of saturation in the mid-tones. Generally that's where I'd leave it. And pull down saturation in the highlights and shadows. I find that makes for a more realistic image. So here we go. That looks pretty cool, I think. Now armed with all that information, go away, make some cinematic footage, and then come join us at the GoPro Filmmakers Facebook group, where you can share the videos there, and then we can all have a look at what each other has done and pat each other on the back and then help each other, because at the end of the day we're all learning. There's always gaps in our knowledge, so it's really, really good to find a community where we can share this. And hopefully you'll stick around for more in the future. If you liked what we've done here, if I've given you any useful information, just hit like. And if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you on the next one.